Ladies and gentlemen, this is a potato, and this is a Polygon article arguing for the abolishment of the police and the armed forces in the Mass Effect universe. The correlation is immediately obvious, and frankly, I wouldn't normally go for targets quite this thoroughly subterranean, but occasionally the holy cause of gatekeeping requires you to shine a spotlight on even the biggest of idiocies. Pointing out hypocrisy and retardation may seem somewhat futile in this day and age, but still, we shall make the effort. Mass Effect's revival reminds us it's time to abolish the space police. Ah yes, go out, get milks, purchase some ice creams for the 17th of May, and abolish the space police. I knew I'd forgotten something along the way. What would it mean to defund the Normandy? Well, it would see basically all life in the galaxy wiped out by ginormous robotic space octopuses, which, I do admit, would see a drastic decrease in violent crime. After all, if there's nobody alive, crime as a concept somewhat loses meaning, doesn't it? So, I suppose that is one argument for abolishing the police. Like, hey, if we did this, there'd be less violent crime, because, well, there'd be less of us overall. You know, that's a fine argument right there. At the very least, for my side of the argument. After the wave of protest last summer following the police killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, among others, I would offer a slight comment on the technicalities of these two, but YouTube is still rather touchy on the subject, so I shall refrain for the time being. The topic of defunding the police began to see more frequent and serious public discussion. I know, it's absurd. Hell, at this point, I'm all for it. No, seriously. Let's do it. Abolish the police in cities that vote for it, of course, for a period of 3 months. You know, you don't want to be too short. You really want to hammer home the point, you know? Do that, and we won't need to have this discussion again for another 10,000 odd years. It's the quickest way to resolve everything. Granted, the damages and the death toll, but again, a sacrifice I may be willing to make. Several city councils even introduced measures to reallocate police funds to social programs with vastly inferior budgets. Because as we all know, social workers are trained every day to talk down violent, drugged-up criminals with weapons. Police corruption, which had previously been glossed over by reformist appeals to root out a few bad apples, was finally cracked wide open. Was it? I didn't hear these news, revealing the racist structural rot underlying the entire institution. My oh my, I heard policing apparently was invented as a way to capture slaves. Which isn't ridiculous at all or anything, Maybe policing as a concept was bad. Maybe it couldn't be reformed, but should be abolished instead. Yes. Yeah, this is a big brain idea here. An institution that every single human civilization throughout the entirety of our history has seen as necessary. Maybe that was all a mistake. And how is it working out for the various cities that have made moves to abolish parts of the police force? Violent crime skyrockets? You don't say. No, surely. Highest murder rate since 1995? During an epidemic, I might add as well, where people generally speaking aren't allowed out of their goddamn houses. Must be the heat or something. You know, a coinkydink, surely. Something in the water supply, most definitely. The far-reaching fallout from these traumatic events and revelations wound up affecting the world of entertainment, notably including NBC's Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Ah yes, we need to take a step back here. Forget about the skyrocketing crime, forget about the murder rate that just keeps on climbing. We need to talk about the truly important matters in our day-to-day life. A mediocre NBC comedy show. Thank you, Polygon, for helping me really center myself. A show in the creative lineage of other workplace sitcoms like The Office and Parks. And on occasion, blah 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 blah, but a fictional police precinct in Brooklyn staffed by a young and diverse crew of wisecracking cops. I hate it already. I tried watching the first season. I think I got 3 episodes in before I had a strong urge to add to the rising murder statistics. Despite being a far cry from Oakley's stunting, tactical, vest-wearing, thick-necked, wild-made depictions of police, by the way, I do recommend SEAL Team 6. You know, all of those things, and therefore vastly better. The characters on the show could not escape the reckoning sweeping through the media landscape. It became the subject of viral tweets as collide articles asking the question of whether the subsequent seasons of the show might not see the beloved cast transferred to an entirely different and depoliticized line of work. Ah yes, we have a funny, quote-unquote, satirical police show. How about we make them into garbage disposal people? Surely that will be equally interesting, right? Well, from my perspective, it might as well. Like becoming firefighters. Okay, yeah, a bunch of wisecracking firefighters. He's got an old woman on his shoulder, they're moving out, smoke's everywhere, flames are licking up, the broad is keeling over any second, and he stops to have a witty conversation with his comrade. To be fair, I can see the appeal in that. Post office workers? Riveting. Or public school teachers? You know, you could make something out of that Malcolm in the Middle style. Well, that was another show that was good. The Kalina piece paints a compelling picture of the show's root problems. Does it? What happens when we love a story's character but hate the ideological foundation of their jobs? Can the two be separated? Not to crazy ideologues, no, I'm afraid. BioWare's famous space opera trilogy Mass Effect, now packaged into the single Legendary Edition and released on modern consoles, arguably suffers from a similar problem. These games experience runaway popularity at their height and retain a dedicated fan base to this day. Legendary Edition is proof enough that there remains a lasting sense of goodwill towards the franchise. Interesting choice of words, as if people, when the game was released, was like, yes, I like the story, but do I have to play as a cop? Enough to invest the time and energy needed to update and re-release it. But when the most fans reminisce about what they truly love about the game, it's the memorable relationship between a young, diverse cast of characters that they tend to bring up. Actually, one of my most memorable moments is when I sucker punched that random reporter woman. I did not see that coming. It was, as Gibbs put it, an unexpected yet welcome surprise. Less warm recollection is spent on the jobs these characters hold. Incorrect. Which exist in various forms in the military arms of the galaxy's major political players. Whether it's Earth Alliance military, Cerberus commandos, or reinstated Alliance Navy officers, Shepard and their crew are always some version of glorified space cops. They travel the galaxy, maintain security, and enforce order. How horrible. While largely being unaccountable to any power beyond their own. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the entire plot of Mass Effect 1 that the Council refused to take actions against Saren, therefore prompting the humans to take their own course of action? So they were held responsible, told to not do these things, and the humans, knowing that they were in the right, because, you know, humans, fuck yeah, we did the right thing and saved all of those silly-willy little alien buggeroos. Well, except for the Council. I let them die. They deserved it. How, then, might an abolitionist perspective impact a series like Mass Effect? Total extermination of everything that lives, basically. I mean, it's pretty easy. Here, you know, this isn't the difficult one. What would happen if Mass Effect, if Shepard didn't stop the genocidal alien monsters? I don't know. But I'm presuming it has something to do with the G word. What new jobs might Shepard and their crewmates be assigned that would still allow them their camaraderie, their heart-wrenching moments of dramatic tension? How do we take these rich instances of sci-fi melodrama and extract them from the unseemly and violent drudgery of enforcing order across a vast and chaotic frontier? The violent drudgery. Only a fake lefty can make violence boring. I mean, real life violence we can condemn, but video game violence is surely supposed to be amusing, right? It's a stress relief, it's a power trip, it's something fun. And if your game's action, combat, and violence isn't fun, you've done something wrong. Details, I suppose. Blah, 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 blah. Essentially, they keep on going on how to transform this, though they never actually give an alternative. Not through the entire article does it ever go like, oh, this is what they could do. Because there really isn't a whole lot else that they could do and maintain the story the way it was. As a package, Mass Effect doesn't immediately resemble modern American policing. Why would it have to? Rather than a neighborhood beat, Shepard patrols light years of space. Their crew is made up of aliens, robots, and humans of many different races and genders, though it is worth noting black women are absent. By the way, you are never going to be inclusive enough. Stop trying. The remit is truly limitless, ranging from noir-inspired detective cases to terrorist attacks to full-blown military skirmishes, and the occasional release of potentially genocidal monstrous insects. I released them because it'd be funny. Yet, like most science fiction, Mass Effect models its far-flung fantasies on the structure of our own society. Kinda. The form of government that rules over game's setting is a familiar, seemingly liberal one. Seemingly. An alliance of Earth nations cooperates with a more powerful council that represents the other dominant alien species, Space NATO, if you will. Well, no, NATO is not a government organization, it's a military alliance, but I wouldn't expect you to know the difference. Unlike the apparently authoritarian bent of the ancient Prothean Empire that came before, Mass Effect contemporary universe resembles our own both in structure and messaging. Freedom of choice as a concept is cherished, or at least the illusion of it, and individual freedom and a representative democracy are apparently the standards. When will Polygon get to the point of telling us this is a bad thing? But these supposedly enlightened modern... that didn't take long. Modes of rule come with a heavy arm of law and order firmly attached. Yes, you cannot have a representative democracy without law and order. It is literally impossible. You cannot have a state without law and order. It cannot exist. Because, at that point, though granted, in modern-day human history you have seen elements of this as well, when one side loses, what is preventing that side from simply going, no, don't want to do this no more, we're going to do our own thing? Well, it's the fact that it is a system. It is an established system with mechanisms to enforce the will of the people. Mark Neoculus, in his book A Critical Theory of Police Power, argues that the genius of liberalism was to make the police appear as an independent, non-partisan agency simply enforcing the law and protecting all citizens equally from crime. The genius later was as to make it appear as. Now, that's the thing. The genius of liberalism was to try and enforce that, because that is exactly what a police force is supposed to be. A police force is absolutely, 100% supposed to be a neutral arbiter of the laws agreed upon by civilized society, and never, at any point, for any reason, should he be taking any form of a political stance. To just really hammer this point home as well here. You've probably heard about the UK queer police. You've got this guy here standing next to a Pride banner and a Pride police car in the back as he wears Pride epaulets. Now, you may not be aware, but even in the savage, dark and rainy land of England, there are laws protecting the rights of gay people. You are not allowed to discriminate against them. In fact, they have all the legal protections of any other citizens. Indeed, they have more legal protections than most, because if you could do anything against them, it is an extra severe crime, because it could also be a hate crime. Not only are they equal in the terms of protection of the law, they are actually superior. And here's the thing. This guy, you now here have political statements. This is not merely a equal representation, because as we said, that already exists. This is now a political statement. The wokest group, the fake left, which uses these symbols as a wedge to increase their power, to take money by being, "Hi, I'm a diversity officer, I'd like 60,000 odd pounds a year, thank you very much." And let me make this brutally clear as well. There is absolutely no difference between this chap right here And these guys are, well, the uniforms, I suppose. They are both, and I'm not kidding here, I am not making a joke. They are both blatantly and overtly political enforcement groups. Now, yeah, sure, you could certainly argue that there was some difference in the extremity of their actions, absolutely, but theoretically, these guys were overtly political as a policing force. The Gestapo, by the way, and this guy, an overtly political policing force, even with their own banners, their own marks, and their own flags. Okay, I'm being a hint hyperbolic, but in principle, no, there really is no difference. So, to appear as standing at arm's length from the presence of administration and thus the policing of civilized society. That is what policing should be. Standing in stark contrast to the Citadel's Council's seemingly measured and cautious form of governance, impotent, useless, and completely helpless to stop the incoming disaster, you mean? Shepard's driven and hegemonic power hogs the spotlight. Hegemonic. He's not even in control of the Normandy, technically. He's in command of a nation's vessel or an alliance vessel. But, they're given free rein to do what the Council is unwilling to be seen as doing, as they know it wasn't the Council who ordered them to do it either. Keep everyone in line. Regardless of their various official titles, Shepard acts with the approval of the galaxy's ruling powers. Eventually. It would give them total discretion. How else would you describe the events of Mass Effect 2, in which Shepard comes back from the dead, yada yada yada, and then gets no circumstances, no consequences. Though, to be fair, kind of valid argument, though also Cerberus turned out to not be anywhere near as bad as they supposedly were, which I thought was a pretty damn cool little plot point, by the way. So, this is because, why was there no consequences? This is because Shepard's power is a police power. It is a form of power, as Neoculus puts it, that persistently manages to break through any parameters imposed upon it. Nonsense. The police are it is a branch of our government. They are held accountable. You can sue them. In fact, it's rather easy to sue them. There are people who have made careers out of suing the cops. Essentially, if they give you a fine, you can sue them for the cost of that fine. If they do something that could result in that fine, you can sue them for that fine. They are quite easy to hold to account, relatively speaking, though again, you do have to obey their instructions then and there, obviously. This being the case, it seems pretty appropriate to view Mass Effect through an abolitionist lens. Does it? Hell, even if we were to agree that apparently the police in Mass Effect is above the law as super soldiers, they saved literally the entire goddamn universe. Galaxy details. No, I don't think we should abolish them in that case. Like the police force of the liberal West, it's often crossed the line and tragically resort to violence. Violence is not... tragically resort to violence, yeah, sure. In some cases, it's not warranted. But they must be willing to. Violence is the ultimate authority, without which you have no authority. Shepard explains away their own brash and violent behavior as a regretful necessity. Well, my Shepard certainly didn't regret it, I'll tell you that much. In fact, like cops in real life whose special status as the sole legitimate use of force has contributed to a mindset of them against us. In the US, maybe. Amongst leftists, maybe. Over here in Norway, not really. As Alec S. Vitani described in his book, The End of Policing, Shepard tends to aggressively defend the need for their reckless and hyper-violent approach. There is a need for it in Mass Effect, though. This is the problem, again, with choosing Mass Effect for this, because there is a very clear and pressing need for Shepard's actions. In one scene, they rail against a news reporter who tries to challenge their narrative. You mean the news reporter who is trying to push fake news? Yes, fake news. Like, why does the fake left, excuse me, let me be honest here, constantly identify with the negative sides of a story, with the de facto villains? A bit harsh, but you get what I'm meaning. Then also endlessly impatient with the council's cautious and his natural distrust of the upstart human race. You mean the hero, excuse me. Despite the later game's increased focus on maintaining a relationship and navigating ethical quagmires, Shepard will always remain a burning point of white-hot light, unable and unwilling to slow down and reflect on the consequence of their behavior. Actually, I think Mass Effect 2 was that the entire game, frankly, but again, details. In discussing the hypo-ethical career changes of Jake Peralta, Charles Boyle, Amy Santiago, and the rest of the characters in Brooklyn 999, I don't care about this stupid TV show, blah 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 blah, I'm just gonna skip that. Even when Brooklyn Nine-Nine tries to address the police wrongdoing, such as in the episode where Terry Crews' character is accosted by a racist fellow cop, it reduced the problem to one bad apple who needs to be reported, leaving the system itself intact and verified. Once again, I would like to bring up Polygon's cousin, the potato. Their potato. Answer me this. If the police is systematically racist, why is a racist police officer a bad apple? Why does he not indeed deserve a medal for merely, taking on the spirit of the police force personally and embodying it? The potato, much like Polygon, does not have an answer to this apparently obvious question. Mass Effect is equally invested in defending Shepard's role as a galactic supercop, as the man or woman upon whose shoulders all of the galaxy's securities rest. I'm reading too much. From the earliest moments of the game, you are told that the galaxy is on the verge of violent chaos, which it is, even if you are rarely actually shown it. Interesting picture to place beneath that sentence, isn't it? Rest assured that outside the boundaries of civilized space there are pirates, slavers, and other boogeymen, most of which you fight, by the way, which unaccountable to figures like the Spectres must fight against. Yes. Yes! Once the Reaper threat is established in Mass Effect, it takes over the remainder of the game's plot as the concern. Here, in convenient all caps, is a challenge not just to the Council's political hegemony, but to the very fabric of civilization. It's hard to argue against Shepard's needing to discard the rules in consideration of the status quo, against them needing to utilize every tool in their violent arsenal in order to face this massive threat. So far, the article has made a lot of words and yet said absolutely nothing, before then justifying the exact opposite position. How do they do it? Unquestioned is why only Shepard can fill this role. Because he's the guy who's there. Right then. Right there. And who has the balls and the perseverance to do it. Anyone else could have, nobody else did. Why only they can be the only ultimate decide what is to be done with the trillions of souls. Part of the illusion of security is that we are meant to bow down before it without even asking what it is or how it came to be granted such a status. Now there is a certain point. Just as we are expected to bow down before the police power that claims to secure us. Yes. To a degree, yes, but you should never just accept, oh, more security, give me security. No. Accountability, which is again why anything like this, any police officer in any kind of colors like this, any organization like this, abolish, fire immediately, because this is probably the single biggest threat to impartial and fair policing that exists. This dynamic plays out in the way in which Shepard relates to the rest of their crewmate as well. We're not serving as appendages to Shepard's will. I like the way they're making my character sound. Shepard's comrades will often bring their own personal dilemmas and problems to the table, yet they usually rely on Shepard to make the final decision about how to handle their issues. He's the main character, that's why. It is Shepard who ultimately has agency over how they live their lives. Well, because I'm smarter than them, to be fair too. They play defense attorney for a helpless Tali facing the accusation of her own people. They decide what happens to Thane's criminal son, Samara's criminal daughter, and Jacob's criminal dad to stay on theme. Good. Policing is about power. Yes. The power to maintain order. Yes. Using one's maximum discretion. No. Maximum discretion? Hell no. Have you seen the amount of rules and regulations the police are asked to carry out? Do you remember to keep in their minds? Bearing in mind as well now that after the whole George Floyd thing, you can actually be found guilty of a lot of things. Again, I'm treading careful ground here because YouTube. But you can be... How do I word this in a way that doesn't get me yeeted? By following the instruction manual, you can get yourself in an awful lot of trouble. That's fair enough. In providing police with such a free mandate, we make the trusting assumption that they will always make the correct decision. We really don't. Or when they make a mistake, as they inevitably and often do, there are very few mechanics with which to punish them. I like how this article started with quoting the George Floyd trial, by the way. This makes the police, like the government it represents, a fundamentally paternalistic organization, one in which we are to place all our faith so that it may secure our lives, though only in the ways that it sees fit. You know what? Polygon does have an argument there against the government. The government does need a lot less power. It needs a lot more accountability and a lot more scriptures. In fact, making it more like the police is starting to sound awfully good to me. Knowing all this, it is difficult to picture a version of Mass Effect without a centered and paternalistic Shepard. What is Mass Effect if you remove the figure who served the entire goddamn setting, who established to police both political and personal boundaries? A very boring video game, ending in death, that's what. The themes of order and hierarchy thread their way through every layer of the narrative, determining who is cherished and who is vilified. Even though the games go to great lengths to establish the diversity and rich variety of the galaxy, it remains a divided and unequal place. Weird that. Almost like, reality. The Citadel and the main worlds you visit tend to be populated by select, respectable civilizations. Rarely do you visit the lesser worlds populated by alien races. Like the Batarians, you only tend to show up in combat zones as interchangeable cannon fodder. Partially because they're a violent bunch of savage maniacs, but again, further details. Or in background stories as cartoonish villains threatening innocent civilians. They lash out from beyond the borders of settled space as the elites are living in the center, a permanent criminal underclass, an underclass that arguably encompasses any alien who isn't lucky enough to be part of Shepard's crew on the Normandy. Here is the awful TV show, by the way, and yes, it is just as giggly and terrible as it looks like. Blah blah blah. If it is stripped away its militaristic aesthetic and was led by someone other than its quasi-fascistic super soldier, referring to Shepard, the intractability of this format comes down to a limit of imagination, arguing that Mass Effect should be something else than a hero story, just that it is difficult to imagine a world like ours free from state violence. Impossible, in fact. Literally impossible. The entirety of human civilization has depended upon state violence in one way or another, be it a lowly village chief with a large stick, or a potato, or all the way up now to massive governments with huge institutions, the police force, the military, etc. Savage individualism. Savage individualism. And insurmountable hierarchies. I love this. So, the basis of any civilized society, the state having the ability to enforce some form of rules, individualism, and hierarchy. All negative things, obviously. It is equally difficult to envision a game like Mass Effect where you are not playing as the ultimate securing force, the one who gets to put everything back in its place. So this entire article that said, it's time to abolish the space police, now concludes with, I can't find any way to abolish the space police. Good God. Mr. Potato. You, with your infinite wisdom and experience in these matters, must be able to explain to me how you can sit down and write, probably for hours, and arrive at absolutely no conclusion, beyond that your own point is incorrect. Please, explain. Sadly, once again, the potato appears to have no questions. I should probably stop asking a spud for guidance, but it seems just about as fruitful as looking to Polygon for any, frankly. The ideological work that the prison performs. Angela Davis writes, in Are Prisons Obsolete? No, lunatics. Is that it relieves us of the responsibility of seriously engaging with the problems of our society. What? It seems like a prison is directly engaging with the problems of our society by trying to re-educate people. Oh, never mind. Games often perform a similar function. Shooting everything into place is the path of least resistance, and also the fun one, and so the one that is often taken, but that doesn't mean other paths are impossible. You can explore a vibrant and colourful galaxy without serving as its enforcing power. How? You can experience these complex narrative systems in a satisfying ways without requiring all final decisions to be subject to your own approval. How? It's all possible, but it requires courageous vision, as well as hope and trust in others. Blah blah blah, blah blah buzzword, believe in you who believe in me, who believes in me, who believes in you. Completely meaningless, waffly gruel. It is literally hopes and dream bullshit ground up into a corporatist paste and then smeared over a website. Mass Effect lends a rhetorical support to this cause, particularly in its endings, which aims for peace across the galaxy. Yeah, peace through superior firepower at least. While also arguing that a lone, unaccountable hero is the one to deliver it to us. In reality, it is only we as players and as people who must find our own way toward a better world. All of this 31 minutes of recording and reading, and I was going to read all of this just to make a point, and not a single argument in favor of this has been made. Not a one. Not a goddamn one. And it ends in little buzzword salad that simply says, I don't like this, but I have no idea how to do it better. Grumble, grumble. Now, if you will excuse me, after this I am going to go my own ways and having satisfyingly intelligent conversation with what is soon going to be a part of my dinner. It is going to be far more enjoyable, I do believe. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Have a good day.